We often imagine medieval peasants as helpless against the cold. No gloves, no insulated jackets, no hand warmers slipped into their pockets, just bare, cracked hands exposed to winds that could freeze water solid in minutes. And yet, they survived, day after day, winter after winter, working the fields, tying ropes, chopping wood with fingers that never froze completely stiff. How? By turning their own body into a furnace, by trapping heat with straw and rags, by using nothing but breath friction and stone to keep their hands alive. These weren't random tricks. They were deliberate techniques, practical, tested, and passed down through generations. Not primitive, not clumsy, but clever enough that even today's survivalists could learn from them. In this video, you'll discover how medieval peasants fought the winter wind with bare hands. And by the end, you'll have to ask yourself, if they could do it without gloves, could you? The wind cut straight through Hughes's rough wool tunic like invisible knives scraping across his skin. He bent over a bundle of straw trying to tie it together, but his fingers shook so violently it looked like he was playing an invisible banjo. Each knot took forever, and every second the cold crept deeper. Hughes knew the stakes. If his hands froze, it wasn't just ouch, that hurts. It meant no fire, no tools, no food. In the Middle Ages, losing your hands wasn't an inconvenience. It was game over. No coffee break by the heater, no hot chocolate, no I'll just scroll TikTok until I warm up. And here's the irony today. We whine about cold fingers while texting outside for 5 minutes. Hughes. He had to keep working barehanded in sub-zero wind with nothing but grit and a few survival tricks older than the country you live in. So the real question wasn't if his hands would get cold. Of course they did. The question was, could he keep them working long enough to survive the day? That's when he pulled out the old peasant playbook, 5 clever tricks to fight the cold with nothing but his own 2 hands. Hughes pressed his numb red fingers deep into his armpits right up against his chest. It wasn't glamorous, but in that moment, it was genius. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat pushed warmth from his core into his frozen hands like a medieval heating system powered by nothing but blood and stubbornness. See, here's the science. The human body is basically a furnace. Your torso, the chest, lungs, and especially the heart, acts as the engine. By tucking his hands under his arms, Hughes wasn't just hiding from the wind. He was tapping directly into that engine, pulling heat from where it mattered most. In survival terms, it's called core heat transfer. In everyday terms, it's called don't let your hands fall off. Now think about how we deal with cold today. If our fingers feel chilly while holding an iced latte, we run inside, crank the thermostat, or maybe slip on a pair of heated gloves with built-in batteries. Hughes didn't have that luxury. He didn't even have proper mittens. His version of heated gloves was himself. It's low-tech, zero-cost, and absolutely foolproof, unless, of course, you're ticklish. And let's be real, you've probably done this too. Ski trip, morning jog, or even waiting at the bus stop, you shove your hands under your arms or between your thighs without even thinking. That instinct, it's the same one Hughes relied on to get through winters when the word frostbite wasn't a medical term yet, but a death sentence. The beauty of it is how universal it is. No tools, no gear, just biology and a little know-how. And when you picture this farmer crouched against the wind, hugging his own body just to keep his hands alive, you realize survival doesn't always look epic. Sometimes it just looks like a cold man giving himself the world's least comfortable hug. So let me ask you, if the batteries in your heated gloves died tonight, would you remember to use this trick? Or would you be stuck waving your hands around, hoping the cold takes a coffee break? Hugh cupped his hands together, forming a rough little bowl, and brought them right up to his mouth. He exhaled hard, and for a moment, it looked like he was breathing smoke from a tiny fire. The hot air lingered between his palms, swirling in a cloud of white vapor before sinking back into his frozen skin. Primitive, maybe. Effective, absolutely. Here's the thing. Your breath is basically portable heat. Every time you exhale, that air leaves your lungs at about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough to make a difference when your fingers are screaming in pain. By trapping it between his palms, Hughes was creating a mini greenhouse effect for his hands. Modern scientists call it convection heat transfer. Hughes just called it not losing my fingers today. Now picture the difference between him and us. Today, if our hands feel cold while waiting for an Uber, we blow on them for 5 seconds and then dive back into our heated car, problem solved. Hughes didn't have heated seats or even a heated house most of the time. His car heater was literally his own lungs. It's the medieval version of a personal space heater and the fuel source oxygen, free, unlimited, and as renewable as it gets. And you've definitely done this too. Ski trip, football game, or just standing outside when you forgot your gloves, you blow into your hands without thinking. That instinct, that little puff of hot breath, is the same move a medieval peasant used to keep frostbite at bay. Only difference for you, it's comfort. For him, it was survival. So when you imagine Hughes crouched in the biting wind hands, cupped like a beggar, asking his own breath for mercy, it's not heroic, it's human. It's one man squeezing every bit of warmth from his own body to keep going. And maybe the real question is, if you were stuck outside with nothing but your breath, could you use it wisely? Or would you just end up fogging up your phone screen? Hughes scanned the frozen field around him and spotted a pile of straw left over from the harvest. With stiff, trembling fingers, he grabbed a handful, twisted it into a rough bundle, and jammed it between his palms. It wasn't soft. It wasn't comfortable. But instantly, it created a barrier. Tiny pockets of trapped air inside the straw fibers started holding on to whatever warmth his skin could give. Primitive insulation courtesy of Mother Nature. Here's the science behind it. Insulation works by trapping air. Still, air doesn't transfer heat easily, so even a bunch of dried grass can slow down the process of heat escaping from your skin. Think of it like medieval bubble wrap. The straw itself isn't warm, but the air it holds becomes a shield against the wind. Now compare that to today. We've got fleece gloves, Thinsulate, and fabrics engineered in billion-dollar labs that promise maximum thermal efficiency. Hughes. He had a broken-down field and whatever scraps he could find. His winter fashion line was basically hay moss and maybe a scrap of wool if he was lucky. And yet the principle is the same. Whether it's high-tech insulation or a fistful of straw, you're still fighting the same enemy heat loss. And honestly, haven't you done a low-budget version of this yourself? Stuffing napkins into your sleeves at a football game, wrapping your hands in paper towels at a freezing gas station bathroom, or even shoving your hands into your hoodie pocket with a crumpled receipt for extra padding. Congratulations, you've just reenacted medieval science. Picture Hughes crouched in the snow hands, wrapped around a messy wad of straw, looking less like a farmer and more like a desperate scarecrow trying to stay alive. Not stylish, not cozy, but effective enough to keep him moving. So, here's the challenge for you. If all your fancy gear disappeared tomorrow, could you improvise with nothing but scraps like Hughes did? Or would you just sit there wishing Amazon Prime delivered faster? Hughes rubbed his hands together so hard it sounded like sandpaper on wood. The skin on his palms was already cracked from weeks of winter, but he didn't care. The goal wasn't comfort, it was ignition. Every stroke created just enough friction to send a pulse of heat back into his numb fingers. He wasn't starting a bonfire, he was starting circulation. Here's the science. When you rub your hands together, you're converting mechanical energy into thermal energy. In plain English, movement equals heat. Even a few seconds of rubbing increases blood flow to the skin, waking up those nerve endings before frostbite sets in. It's the same principle that makes you warm up during a jog, only this time Hughes had to jog with his hands. Now let's compare that to today. We roll our eyes when we see cartoons of characters shivering and rubbing their hands together like it's some old-timey cliche, but science says otherwise it works. And you've probably done it too, maybe without even noticing. Waiting in a cold car, standing outside a store in January, you rub your hands out of instinct. That little trick is older than every survival manual ever printed. Hughes, though, didn't have the option to stop after 10 seconds and grab a hot coffee. His Starbucks moment was just grinding skin against skin until he felt something again. Was it pleasant? Nope. Did it sting? Oh, absolutely. But pain meant blood was flowing, and blood flow meant life. Picture him crouched low in the snow teeth, clenched furiously, scrubbing his palms until his face twisted in both agony and relief. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't stylish, but it was enough to keep his tools in his hands and his body in the fight. So next time your fingers get cold, try it, rub them like your life depends on it. Because for Hughes, it actually did. And tell me, would you rather look a little silly rubbing your hands, or lose the chance to use them at all? Before heading out to the fields, Hughes had one last trick up his rough wool sleeve. He'd take a few round river stones, the kind that fit neatly in your palm, and bury them in the glowing embers of last night's fire. He'd wait until they were almost too hot to touch, then wrap each one in a thick scrap of linen. Now, instead of ice-cold fingers, he had a portable heat source, simple, rugged, and surprisingly effective. The Science's straightforward stone has a high specific heat capacity, which means it can absorb a ton of energy and release it slowly over time. In other words, those rocks acted like medieval batteries charged up by fire, drained slowly into his freezing hands. Survivalists today use the same principle with hot water bottles or heated metal canteens. Hughes just didn't have stainless steel or Nalgene. His version of a Yeti hand warmer was literally a rock. Now compare that to us. We walk into REI and buy $50 rechargeable hand warmers with USB-C charging ports and temperature settings. Hughes had Zero Tech Zero Plastic Zero warranty, but he still walked into the snow carrying something warm. And if you've ever sat by a campfire and picked up a stone that was lying near the flames, you know exactly how effective this trick really is. Picture him trudging across the frozen ground, clutching a linen-wrapped stone in his palm, like a secret weapon against the cold. Not glamorous, not stylish, but when your fingers are on the edge of going numb, fashion points don't matter. Warmth does. And here's the irony, you've probably done this yourself. Maybe not with stones, but with coffee mugs. How many times have you wrapped your hands around a hot cup of coffee just to warm them up? Same principle. Hughes didn't drink lattes, but he mastered the physics. So, here's the question for you. If your batteries died and your fancy gear failed, would you know to heat up a stone to save your hands? Or would you just stand there, scrolling your dead phone, wishing for Wi-Fi and warmer fingers? The night came down hard on Hughes. The wind roared across the open field like a wild beast, clawing at every seam in his rough wool clothes. His fingers throbbed, his knuckles stiff, but thanks to every trick he had pulled, he was still moving. He tucked his hands under his arms whenever the numbness got too sharp, his own body acting like a backup furnace. When that wasn't enough, he cupped his palms, breathing hot air, until the steam hung between his fingers like ghostly smoke. When the wind bit deeper, he shoved straw into his hands, creating a rough, scratchy insulation that trapped what little heat his skin could give. And when all else failed, he rubbed his palms furiously together until pain shot through his nerves, pain that meant blood was still flowing. Finally, in his pocket of linen, the last weapon, a heated stone glowing faintly with warmth, his medieval hand warmer that turned survival into possibility. This was no fashion statement. It was a checklist of survival written in instinct and desperation. Hughes wasn't aiming to be comfortable, he was aiming to see the sunrise. Now compare that to us today. We've got ski gloves that cost more than his yearly rent would have been. We've got battery-powered warmers, thermal leggings, even jackets with built-in heating coils. And yet we still complain when our hands get cold walking from the car to the grocery store. Hughes would have laughed if his face wasn't frozen stiff. The real difference isn't the technology, it's the mindset. He didn't wait for comfort, he created it with whatever was within reach, his body, his breath, the earth, and a bit of fire. That was the medieval survival toolkit tested in every storm. Picture him now, crouched low against the barn wall, the wind howling snow piling at his boots. His hands shake, but they're not useless. Each technique has bought him one more hour, one more chance to fight the cold. In his world, that was the only currency that mattered. So here's the question for you. If stripped of all your modern gear, could you keep your hands alive through a single freezing night like Hughes did? Or would you just be the guy, Googling, "Why are my hands so cold?" with fingers too numb to type? As the first light of dawn crept across the frost, Hughes rose stiffly from his crouch. His hands were cracked, trembling, but still alive. And in the Middle Ages, that was victory. Each trick he used, body heat, breath straw, friction, and the hot stone had bought him one more night against the cold. He stepped into the pale morning air boots, crunching on ice breath, turning white. For us, comfort is central heating and heated gloves. For Hughes, comfort was simply bending his fingers after surviving the night. That contrast says it all. They fought for every degree of warmth with nothing but grit and scraps of nature. So here's the question. If tomorrow came without power gloves or gadgets, could you do the same? Or would you sit and shiver while men like Hughes got back to work?